Please listen to the legal disclaimer at the end of this video. Good afternoon, good evening, as the case may be. This is Credit Rage Uncut. This is the 9th edition. I am Boiler Williams, and tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about affidavits. And I specifically want to talk about affidavits being used in court against people that are involved in collection issues, whether you're suing a collector or a collector suing you. It's very common that it's probably even more common than very common. It's almost a certainty that you'll see an affidavit put in against you. So, usually without much understanding of things, that just looks like a trump card that they played, and it certainly is not. So I just want to talk about affidavits at a high level, and maybe in a subsequent video, I will come back and go into more depth on details. But just kind of wanted to tell you that when you have an affidavit used against you, that's not the end of the world. And in fact, it's probably one of my favorite things now is when I am in court and somebody files an affidavit. I love it. I love going through that thing and tearing it apart, and it's very easy to do. So some of the things that you start out by looking at is just look at the signature of the affiant. That's the person that signed the affidavit, and then the person that notarized it. A lot of times affidavits aren't even notarized, and if they're not notarized, then they're not really an affidavit, and it's very easy to say that they're hearsay. So look and see that it's notarized. Look at the dates. Did the notary sign their date before the affiant signed their date, so it was notarized before it was signed? That's not uncommon to see that kind of stuff, because what happens is a big bank or a big bank will have a department that all they do is affidavits, and it's just like an assembly line where the vice president of whatever nonsense signs it, and then they hand it over to, or in a big bucket that goes off to somebody to notarize them, and it might, the person that notarizes it might be in a different state. That's not uncommon. So just really look it over and make sure that everything jives. And I've seen it probably 5 or 6 times where the affidavit isn't notarized. So just chew it up if it's not notarized. Also, so when you look at an affidavit, look at all those statements should be true, and it shouldn't be a judgment. It shouldn't say, I thought the weather was crappy yesterday. That can't be in an affidavit. I could say it was 79 degrees yesterday and raining. That could be in an affidavit, because 79 degrees and raining is not an opinion. That's just facts of what was going on yesterday. And somebody thinking that weather was crappy or not crappy, that's an opinion. So every statement that's in there should be a fact and not somebody's opinion about something. So that's one thing to look at. And if it's not a factual statement, then it shouldn't be in an affidavit. So remember that if you're writing one as well. All these things, kind of remember flipping it over if you're writing an affidavit, not to do any of this stuff. So none of these should be opinions. The other thing to think about is, how does this person know this? If they say Fred Smith's balance was $468.23, and says that in a statement, when was it then? I mean, when was it that number? How does he know it was that number? What systems did he check? All these things. Just keep asking questions about these, and what you're going to end up wanting to do is put in a motion to strike the affidavit, and you'll go line by line through there and say, how does this person know that? Is there any proof of this? So if the person, probably if they say their name, you probably can't really do much about that. Date of birth, whatever. I worked at Aggressive Collection Company. There's no proof of that. That's just a hearsay statement. If it says I worked at this collection company, here's a copy of my something from the employer, my employee ID badge, then you probably can't. But there needs to be factual data attached to it if it's something like that. So look at that. So just go through line by line, and how does this person know that? One of the most common things that they'll do is they'll work for, say you had a credit card with a bank, and then they sold it to this collector. So they'll work for the collector, and they'll say that the balance on your account was $438, and that's that's been verified. And it's like, well, how do they know that? Because that person probably doesn't have access to the Chase. Oops, did I say a bank's name? You know what I was thinking. They don't have access to the bank's records, so they couldn't have verified that. So that statement's just totally absolute nonsense. So if you think about how they could have possibly have known that, most of the things that they state in these affidavits, they couldn't possibly know with certainty. And also in the first part of it, the last affidavit that I dealt with said, my name is Fred Smith or whatever, and the attached statements are things that I know or believe. And if they're facts, you got to know them. You got to have first-hand factual knowledge. If they're things that you believe, they shouldn't be in an affidavit. So which ones are which? So every line I put on there, according to paragraph 1, is this something that Fred Smith knew or believed? We don't know. So anyhow, that was part of my motion to strike that affidavit. Another thing that was done in that particular affidavit was the person said that I was an adult of sound mind. The person's never even met me. How do they know I'm an adult of sound mind? How do they know that? So anyhow, you can go through line by line, and you're going to want to do a motion to strike line by line, every problem that they have, and just go through it, and then wherefore strike this document. So anyhow, if you have a chance to look at an affidavit that comes in against you, I've never been freaked out when I've read one. I really, after knowing, just to go through line by line and say, how could this person possibly know this information? Go through line by line. It's usually pretty fun after this. I'm kind of disappointed I haven't got an affidavit used against me in probably 6 months, so it's disappointing. But it's not a big deal. You can get by it. And also, affidavits shouldn't be used in court as evidence because they're hearsay unless that person is in the courtroom. So if I write an affidavit and somebody tries to use it in court, it's hearsay because I'm not there, even if it's notarized. But they can use it in court if I'm there, but if I'm there, I can just testify anyhow. So just something to think about. And that's all I really had today. I just wanted to talk about the power of an affidavit or the lack of the power of the affidavit. If you have any questions, please email me. My email address is boiler@notlegaladvice.org. My website is notlegaladvice.org. Thanks. Have a great night. This is the legal disclaimer. While the information on this site deals with legal issues, it does not constitute legal advice. The materials in this video and related websites are provided for informational purposes only and do not constitute legal advice. We do not advise on the application of law to an individual's specific circumstances. Although we go to great lengths to make sure our information is accurate and useful, we recommend you consult a lawyer if you want professional assurance that our information and your interpretation of it is appropriate to your particular situation. There are no lawyers in this video or on the notlegaladvice.org family of websites. The contact information for this video is notlegaladvice.org, that is the main blog, nlapublishing.org, that is the main book site. The email address is boiler@notlegaladvice.org. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me. I'd love to hear from you.